Good morning, everybody. I see our colleagues are joining us for the meeting now. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. If you could give me a pin, please.
That's the case, Paloma.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So we will move to the rules for this meeting. Thank you, Panos. Welcome, everybody. We only have a part of the participants that should have joined us. Some of you sent an email saying that they couldn't join today. And for those that register and will join also without registering, thank you for being here. So please, the rules for this meeting are for the ESPD, keep your cameras off and your computers, your micros, off as well. If you have a question during a presentation, just put it please in the chat. But anyway, after every presentation, we will have a couple of minutes to answer your questions. And at the end of the seminar, we will also have some time dedicated exclusively for your questions and answers. If you give me just a moment, because there are many people in the lobby trying to join us, and our colleagues from events, they are blind, so they cannot see it, and are accepting them all. So knowing these rules, please raise your hand if you have a question or put a question in the chat and we will give you the floor. Okay, so now I give the floor to our head of unit, Manuela Cruz, who is going to welcome you all. And I will be giving the access to the meeting to those colleagues that are arriving a bit late. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paloma, and good morning, everybody. And once again, on behalf of the Publications Office of the European Union, I would like to welcome you again to the ESPD annual meeting. I'm Manuela Cruz, I'm the head of the 7th EU Public Procurement Unit at the Publications Office. I will just go briefly through a couple of points. As we all know, the Publications Office is in charge of the maintenance and evolution of the exchange data model for the ESPD since May 2019, and we do it and we rely on the contribution of the open user community. So everybody with an interest in ESPD, which means all of you that are already in the meeting or trying to join. We hold monthly meetings, as you know, and we are glad to see that there are many participants in those, and it is thanks to your feedback, both in the meetings and in GitHub, that we managed to make the ESPD model evolve and adapt it to the needs of the users. That's the purpose. So we will go through today the different developments that took place in 2023, and we will have a look at what will happen in 2024. So there were many that wanted to implement the version 3 of the ESPD exchange data model in 2023. So that's why we kept on working on the version 3, and we published version 3.3 in July, covering a number of aspects. My colleagues will go through the aspects in detail during today's meeting. And I have a particular thank you message for Interproc, who is going to share their experience with us today about how they implemented version 3. And we would like to ask any other of the members of the open user community that may be interested in sharing their experience with us, more than welcome, please do so. Paloma will be thrilled to book your presentations for future meetings, be it the monthly meetings or the next annual event. Okay. 23 is almost over, 24 is coming, and there is work going on for version 4 of the ESPD-EDM. Again, trying to respond to the concerns brought by the open user community. The idea is to have a release candidate in April, and my colleagues will again go through the content of these release candidates with you. The idea is that if this release candidate is checked by you and okay with the users, that it will be published. As you know, there is a formal process for publishing a new version, for adopting a new version that goes through a change management board, which basically is made of the publications office, our colleagues from DG Grow, and from representative of the member states, and usually it will be the representative of the member states in EXCEP that represents the country of the presidency at the time. So if it's until June, it will be Spain, the Spanish representative at EXCEP. But again, this is a formal thing that needs to be done. But of course, if there is an agreement of the members, a wide agreement of the members of the open community, of course, it will move on. Something else that my colleagues will touch upon today, the relationship between the ESPD and the eProcurement ontology, in particular as regards the eAccess part, and also the relation between the ESPD and eCertis. And for that, we count on Marc Schmidt from DG Grow to give us the points, the main points that are being considered. One last point before I close. As you all know, eForms are live. I would say they are alive and kicking because we are getting a lot of procurement notices for publication in TED using eForms. We didn't reach 50-50 between the current old forms and eForms, but we are almost there. And so that means that next year probably we will need to look into how to further align eForms, ESPD, eCertis. So that's something to be considered during 2024 as well. So I will finish talking now. My colleagues will give a lot of presentations. Having said that, we are not just here to talk, we are also here to listen, right, Paloma? We are here to listen. Therefore, we would like to hear from you, your concerns, your ideas. How are you implementing the ESPD-EDM? What are the versions that you currently have implemented, and what are your plans for the future? And for that, we have questions, and I believe that there are questions that will come through Slido. And that's
exactly, Manuela. Thank you very much. They are.
So I have finished. Well, thank you all for your participation and your attention. I will now leave the floor to Paloma and colleagues, and I wish us all a very good meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start with the meeting, we have only a couple of questions for you concerning the ESPD project and concretely, of course, the project we are dealing here with the model. If you could please scan the QR code on your phones or join with the slido.com, and the ESPD 2023 is the code, so that we could start in a couple of minutes when some of you have logged in. So I see there are some colleagues joining still. So we wait one more minute because there is another person in the lobby. Sorry. Okay. So if Panos, if you could please go to the questions of the Slido so that we can read them and to see how the answers will be running. I cannot see on the screen the Slido. I cannot see the questions. Maybe there is a problem. Now it's coming. Okay, thank you very much. I see you are already answering. And the core questions is, of course, which country are you representing? We are interested in knowing how many people are following the project, how many of you are visiting this seminar. And I see for the time being is our colleagues from Greece who are joining us. Some of you are from Luxembourg. 3 participants are still typing. Luxembourg is winning now, and Estonia, Malta, Slovenia, Portugal, Sweden, Belgium. Okay, we all at the publications office are, of course, in Luxembourg. And we are probably not joining this. We have 11 participants who are answering. I will check if somebody's answering just in the chat, because last year it's what we had, that some of the participants prefer to write in the chat. Well, I see somebody's writing in the chat. Gianpaolo, of course, Italy. So Norway. It's also following us today. And we are getting more participants now joining the event, so maybe they can still scan the QR code or join in the slido.com with the code that you have. But for the time being, I see only 12 people answered, plus 1 in the chat. So I think we could move to the next question. Oh, wait, 1 participant is typing. Just a second. 2 are typing. So now it's Norway winning. And that's for the time being. So if we could move to the next question that we have for our colleagues, is which is your profile? What type of user are you? Are you a public authority? Are you a service provider or just an end user that it's going to use a service? You are a member of the modeling team in some enterprise or a public authority, or you are developing team member. 7 of you are answering. I see already public authorities, most of you. Service provider, 20%. Developers, 18%. End user, for the time being, no one. And from the modeling team, I cannot even see the answers. So 67% of you are a public authority. Then we will have a couple of people are answering no, 13, the same as before, and nobody's writing in the chat as far as I can see. Just a second, because today I only have one screen. No answers in the chat. 14 people answering, thank you. So we see most of you are public authorities interested in following this. One more answer. You belong to a developers team. And I think that should be for the moment, and then we can move to the next question, please. Which version of the model, ESPD model, do you intend to use next year, 2024? Maybe you will stay in version 1 for those countries that are still using it since the beginning. Will you move to version 2 or stay in version 2? Do you intend to move to version 3 already for 2024? Wow, everybody's moving. One user is moving to version 3, or it doesn't apply to you because you are not using any version. You are just using the service of another provider. So some of you, I see 11%, 10%, 10%. You will still be using the versions that you have. Some are moving to version 2. Non-applicable for version 8, and unfortunately I cannot see the answer to version 4. I must say version 4 doesn't exist yet. We hope to release it for the next year, but that will be our colleague Pascaline explaining us where we are and how we intend to plan it. I see 14 of you have answered. No answers in the chat for the time being. So I see many of you, and that's our colleagues from Interproc consortium, who are going to move to version 3. And then we will have the last released in use. Thank you. Version 1, 14%. Version 2, 14%. Version 4, if we get all your agreement, and then 7%. Okay, great. Thank you. I see nobody else is answering or participating in the active poll, so we can move to the next slide. Which version have you implemented until now? It's just to see the difference if you, with the previous slide, if you are going to carry on using the same version that you have now, or you intend really to move. So 43% they are using, 50% is so version 1 is winning, 50% is using still the first version that was developed some years ago by our colleagues in Brussels. Grow version 2, 30%, version 3, 23%, sorry, and not applicable for 8%. No answers in the chat as I can see. 13 of you have answered, and I do not see any of you answering in the poll. So I think we could move then to the next question. And what could we improve in the ESPD model? Which are your issues? Which are your expectations? Maybe you can answer with just the keyword so that we get an idea where should we focus for next year. 2 participants are answering. Only 1 is answering now. The appearance, the function, that we can discuss it in the next Open User Community meeting that will take place in January. We could improve the UIDs. That's coming. Already we will have a candidate release for the second quarter of the year, and the UIDs will be changed. I see you have a lot of suggestion, the integration with eCertis. Marc, they are knocking on your door. The management of the lots, integration with the eForms, that's also on our side. It's one of the things that we will deal next year with. The length of the document meaning the form ESPD, I guess. Just a second, I let somebody else in. Integration, the UX, and simplify the function. UX, I'm afraid maybe somebody...
User experience.
It's you.
Yes.
Writing that.
It seems that, but as Manuela said, I will later speak about integration with eForms and eCertis. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I see make it available as SDK. That's coming. We are just having a lot of work with the SDK in the eForms. As you know, they went live recently. And as soon as we can release a member of the teams, we will dedicate more time to do Ontology, which is already the case. Ontology is very similar to what we have, and we will just release the documentation as the SDK for the eForms. It's one of the projects we have planned for next year. 10 of you have answered, and I see most of them, they want to simplify the model. And the reusability across procedures, that's something that we can discuss. And the 330, 320, I'm afraid I don't know what it means. But okay, I see 10 of you have answers. I would say this is the last No, there is one person still typing in. Let's give a couple of seconds. So they released, meaning probably that we should, I cannot understand it, maybe release quicker or just explain much more in advance the releases. The version 4 has been announced since a long time, but we had to stop it to improve the release 3. So this is, I think, the last slide. Thank you for participating. Later at the end of the event, we will have a feedback survey, but concerning rather the event more than the ESPD. And we will share the screen then later at the very end. So for the time being, we will move to our presentation, and our colleague Pascaline will be sharing the slides because she will have the most part of the speech to say. So Pascaline, please, if you could share the slides. And I will just go through the table of contents to explain you what we should expect today and do for you a short introduction. Thank you very much. So if you could move already to the table of contents, thank you. We will have, as I announced, a very short introduction given by me. Pascaline will go through a bit in detail what we have done for version 3 so that you understand all of the changes in case there is somebody else interested in moving to that version. What we did from quarter 4 in 2022 until the summer in 2023. Our colleagues from Interproc are going to do a demonstration, a live demonstration of how they are implementing the ESPD version 3. And then we will have a short break, as you saw in the agenda. The break will take 20 minutes. Afterwards, Pascaline will carry on explaining what we foreseen for version 4. Of course, other changes might be added because we still have some GitHub issues open. And our colleagues from eProcurement Ontology, they will explain the modeling we are doing now for the ESPD request linked to the Ontology. And Marc Christopher from Grow will explain us what's going on with eCertis. At the very end, we will open a last session for questions and answers and any other business or suggestions that you have. So feel free to just raise your hands and ask us whatever you need. And then we can move to the introduction. To the next slide, please. Yep, thank you very much. And the next slide again. So as you see, we started, our colleagues from Grow, in doing the ESPD in July 2016, which is the version 1 that was released during a couple of years to improve it. And from our side, in December 2022, we released the minor version, which was the 3.1.0. This release was not explained in the last seminar because the seminar took place on 30th November and the release was done around the 15th of December. So there were changes that were just announced but were not done. Later, during the beginning of this year, we got several GitHub issues open from your side, and thanks to your participation in the open user community meetings, we could improve that version to fix some of your needs. And we released in May version 3.2.0. And just to fine tune it and allow those colleagues that really needed version 3 ready, we did minor changes. In July was released the version 3.3.0, and then we had the summer break. So since then, we have been working only in the version 4, some of your issues, and in this seminar. So 2024, it's open for version 4. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So what is the situation of the versions across Europe following the information that we have in the link that you see below? The link is telling you the info is from mid-2021, but actually the last update was done mid-2023. It corresponds a bit to what you were answering actually now in the Slidos. 70 countries are using version 1. 5 are using the version 2. 5 are using both. It means that probably they are just developing or they are a bit in between the two of them. And one of the users is one of the countries is using no version. So this has not changed much, except that we are going to have version 3, which is not still yet in our statistics. So the next slide, please. The countries using or interested in using the version 3, again, the information is extracted from mid-2023. There were 22 interested in using that version 3. For the time being, we saw in the slides that there are several interested in going to that version. Of course, it's very recent, and maybe many of you want to see first the experience of our colleagues from Interproc before they move. 2 are not interested in moving to version 3. Some of you already told us they will move from version 2 directly to version 4 when we have released it. And 4 doesn't know yet when they will use version 3. Next slide, please. So during 2023, we had 7 open user community meetings. You know that we normally have a summer break, and December we started last year and this year having no event because it's a bit tight for everybody as not only the Christmas holidays, but we are very busy with other things and on your side as well. So we had this year 25 users in average in each meeting. Actually, it's a slight reduced number than last year, a couple of users less, and from many different countries. As you can see, the last event on October, several colleagues, they sent us really the excuses because there was at the same time another big event. I think it was a country presenting something about e-forms, and many of you apologize and they couldn't participate. So we hope you will join us in January. And if you are interested in the presentations that we had, which are a few e-forms, slides and the reports, you can always go to our documentation. There you see the link and everything is up to date. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So during 2023, not only your issues raised during the meetings were taken into account, but also the issues that you are opening in the common place, the GitHub. There were 23 new issues open. From those issues, some of them are related to the work that we have ongoing now also with the ontology. It was not only related to version 3, it's to the development of the model for ontology and the link with the ESPD. We have solved 14 of these 23 new issues, and currently we have 22 issues open, also from the beginning of the year that were already open before, and they are pending, 9 of them of a third party. So when we start solving troubles in eForms and linking with eCertis, we will be able to close more issues, and we are waiting for you just to give your feedback in the GitHub. You can check the GitHub issues open and the link that you have there. Most of you already know it because it's a regular common place to work. So if we could move then to the next slide, we will see that I have done my introduction and Pascaline will go through the release that we did in the last December. Yeah, thank you. Pascaline, please.
Thank you, Paloma. Hello, everyone. As said, I will present the ESPD releases that occur since the last annual seminar. There have been 3 different releases, the version 3.1.0, the version 3.2.0, and the version 3.3.0. I will also give, after the break, a summarized presentation for the ESPD version 4 that is foreseen for next year.
Pascaline, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. I was saying the release for the version 3.1.0 occurred in December 2022. The link to the GitHub space for the release and also the link to the online documentation are displayed in this slide. The main issue that were tackled were related to the occupation code list. Some general updates regarding code list that I will present in detail in the following slides. Correction regarding data structure, some typos update on the conceptual model, the schematron rule deletions, and online documentation. Sorry, but each time I click, it's mute me. Okay. So regarding the occupation code list, the technical, this occupation code list has been actually updated from EU vocabulary. So we had to update the version of the ESPD to align actually our version with the latest release. So values for this code list are provided by ESCO, which is a multilingual classification of European skills, competences, qualification, and occupation. In this latest update, also the option other occupation were removed. So we had to remove it as well from our taxonomy and our documentation online. The other code list updates were regarding the code list criterion and the code list financial ratio data type. For the code list criterion, we had to update the date format. The format actually for the date was different in the generic code for the code list and in our documentation online. So we made it consistent on both the artifacts. And in the financial ratio type code list, there were inconsistencies between the label used for the language and the actual language. Regarding the general correction in the data structure, we had some data misplacement regarding criteria 35, 52, and 53. There were a misalignment of content. Actually, the content related, for instance, to description was under the column name. It was actually a misplacement, a slide to the left of a group of cells of contents that had to be corrected there. We had also incorrect or missing cardinalities. Even though when a cardinality is missing, we can assume that its default value is 1. We decided to assign actually a real actual value where it was missing. So most of the time it was 1. We had also an issue with incorrect UUID, and we also had to create new requirements in a requirement group where we were missing information regarding the number of fiscal years and also a threshold per year. In this release, we also deleted schematron rules. That schematron rule were related to version 2. And it was no longer relevant for the version 3, so it had been deleted. The documentation has also been updated regarding the element sub-criterion so as to explain how it should be used in the ESPD. Also, the online documentation was extended with a new section to describe the short tag name that we created for all the ESPD descriptive element and also how the implicit numbering is computed. So this section is in the technical handbook. In the main section, common aspect for criteria at the very end. We also proceed to a set of updates regarding XSLT updates. So we perform a refactoring regarding function position to ease the readability. We also define 2 different functions to handle separately exclusion ground and selection criteria. We made also a bunch of corrections regarding some common attributes values like scheme agency ID, list agency ID, scheme version ID, and list version ID. So those values were also corrected in the online documentation for these 2 artifacts to just highlight the same values. So regarding the occupation code list, the code 40.0 was removed. It was the code for other occupation. So we remove also this label of other occupation from the data structure for the criterion C25 selection criteria professional register and also in the documentation online. Regarding the GitHub issue 340, this issue actually was raised because of a discrepancy between mockup and our criterion files for the criterion C29 general yearly turnover. So in the mockup we had two requirements illustrated, and they were missing in the criterion file. So we added them for the number of fiscal years and also for the threshold per year, as you can see in the orange box for this release. The other update regarding this criterion was related to the question group, where we provide information regarding the amount for the turnover, and also the period for the fiscal year. So we had to be able to duplicate, to have several instances of that subgroup, and the cardinality was incorrect there. So we updated the cardinality to multiple, as you can see in the small red square. For this release, we also reviewed the ESPD test case mapping document. So it has been reviewed and updated. This document was available for the version 2. This document provides information regarding business rule in the ESPD. It helps to identify related business rules. It describes also the schematron rules and how to map them with UBL. Helps to validate the criteria of our taxonomy and facilitates the understanding of different validation artifacts. So for the version 3.10, this documentation has been made available in the technical handbook Annex 4. So the link to this annex is displayed on the screen, as well as a screenshot of the documentation, the related documentation, and the version published is a simplified version. So this is everything for the version 3.10. So if you have any question or comments, you can put them in the chat or you can ask them.
Thank you very much, Pascaline. I can imagine that there will be not many questions. I will be checking the chat. All of this was already discussed during the year. So just give me a second to check quickly the chat, and maybe we can quickly move to the next presentation, as we had some troubles with the beginning. We are a couple of minutes late. So if you could move then, please, to the part of the release tool. Thank you.
Okay, so now I will present the release version 3.2.0. So for this release, it was published in May 2023. The link to the GitHub space for the release and the online documentation are displayed. The main issue were related to the correction of list ID values and for code list, and also some general updates regarding code list. We had correction of date and time format in the XSLT files and updates of a bunch of elements like customization ID, profile ID, and procedure code in our ESPD artifact, and as usual, correction in the data structure. So these were the specific tasks, and as for each release, we proceeded also to the generation of generic code for code list, XML samples, updates regarding attributes in our XSLT files, and updates or whenever we had validation errors. We also updated a bunch of schematron rules and the online documentation. So regarding the correction in the data structure, we had a bunch of typos error to correct it regarding double spaces, duplicated words, and spelling mistakes. So for this, we had we defined a VBA script that is using actually built-in function to correct those typos errors. We also had indentation issue and closure of indentation issue and also closure elements issue. So for this, it was to ease the readability of the structure and also to better see the connection between the various elements. There were UUID misuse, also the differences between mockup and taxonomy, and remaining incorrect and missing cardinalities. The second topic was related to element customization ID and profile ID that were completely removed for all the ESPD artifacts because they were no longer used and not then relevant. On the other hand, we reintroduced the element procedure code in our UML conceptual model because it was still used in other ESPD artifacts. We also had to change the date format, the date and time format in our XSLT files for this release. And the other topic was related to code list. So the main was for the list ID attribute, which was actually raised between the differences in the format of the values between the documentation online and the other artifact as the XML, the schematron rows, and the XSLT files. So it was raised regarding the code list property group type, but finally extended to 6 other code list, response data type, criterion element type, Boolean graphic user interface, control type, language, economic operator role type, economic operator size. And for all the updates that we made that I will explain, we also checked and updated the online documentation. Actually, this issue was affecting different levels in the ESPD. So the code list level, the XML level, and the validation with the schematron rules level. Regarding, in general, the code list update, we proceeded to update related to the code list occupation and criteria. Regarding the code list occupation, we had the same ID for different occupations, so it has been requested to DG employment for the update, and also there were that code 4.0.0 that was removed, so we actually imported the latest release from EU vocabulary. It was the one from the 14th of December 2022. And for this release, what we did, we had to update all the related artifacts, meaning the ESPD code list Excel with the latest version, the XSLT files, and the schematron rules for a proper validation. So regarding the criterion code list, it was a misspelling of code. So we had the code authorization without an H, and also the code misinterpretation replaced by the code misrepresentation, and we just proceed to the same updates of all the artifacts that we need in the ESPD with the latest version of this code list. So in this slide, I illustrated how the closure misplacement issue can occur in the ESPD. So in the small square at the bottom, what you can see is two closure elements for a subgroup following each other. So there are two possible interpretations. The first one, it can be seen as an indentation issue. So then we have to slide the element either to the right or to the left. The second interpretation is to view it as a closure misplacement. So we have to find the correct position of the closure elements. So this issue here, we solved it actually as a closure misplacement. So we moved the last closure element up to close the first question subgroup related to the question, does the economic operator fulfill the criteria? And then this subgroup was followed by the two other subgroups. Do you allow checks, or is this information available online? So for the issue 340, so it's a reopen issue regarding the differences between mockup and our taxonomy file for the general yearly turnover criteria. So as you can see in the figure on the left, we have the number of fiscal years and the threshold per year highlighted, but in the criterion file initially, those elements were missing. So in the previous release, we reintroduced those elements, but we were still missing some parts. As you can see in the image on the left at the bottom, in the mockup, we can provide different minimum amount requirement for each fiscal years, where in the taxonomy file, the related requirement cardinality in the red square rectangle, actually, the cardinality is single. So in order to be able to define different amount for each fiscal year, so we change the cardinality to multiple, as you can see in the red small rectangle on the left for the requirement, minimum amount requirement, line 14. So that's the update we did in this release for this issue. Now, for the GitHub issue 375, we delete the element customization ID, profile ID for from all the ESPD artifacts actually, so we no longer have them. They were already deleted in most artifacts. There were still spots where we missed the update actually. So the customization were still present in the documentation, as you can see in the figure on the left in a documentation image. So we delete the customization. The profile ID also was still present in that image and also in the conceptual model. So we delete the profile ID from both the documentation and the conceptual model. So now we no longer have those elements in any of the ESPD artifacts, including the XML samples. On the contrary, we reintroduced the element procedure code in our conceptual model because it was still present in our documentation online and also in our XML samples because we are still using that element. Also, this element procedure code is required for alignment with eForms. So that's another reason why it has been reintroduced. And all those elements, we intend to review their uses in the ESPD for in the future releases. Now I'm going to move to the issue 380 regarding the list ID value for the code list. Actually, the incorrect format used was related to the fact that instead of using the long name of a list ID, a short name was used instead in XML files, XSLT files, and also schematron rows. So the short name is highlighted in the rectangle, the red rectangle. So it's a camel case format. Each word actually starts with a capital letter, no space between words. Whereas the general rules is saying that for technical code list maintained by the ESPD, we should be using the long name. So a long name is actually lowercase plus hyphen, as you can see highlighted in yellow for the property group type. And when it's a code list that is maintained by EU vocabulary, we should use instead a full URL. And at the very end of the URL, we have the long name still, not the short name. So there were discrepancies among the various ESPD artifacts on the format for this attribute value. So the first level that we had to review and check was the code list level. So we checked the ESPD code list Excel files and the XSL that is used to generate the corresponding generic code. So the main updates were regarding the fact that in the XSL we didn't have any instruction at all to generate the list ID value for the generic code. So we updated the XSL file by creating that instruction so as to generate the proper generic code and allow the proper validation later on. The next step was really regarding the XML files generation. So we reviewed the XSLT that are used actually to generate the XML files. In those XSLT files, you have instruction to generate the list ID value, and the format was not respected, so that's why we had inconsistencies. So we had also to align the format value there for the validation later on. And the last level actually is the validation level with the schematron rules, because one main point of the validation is to check some attribute value for the generic code, the code list, and also for our XML samples. And if we are not using the same format, then we had validation errors and inconsistencies, different values. So this issue needs to be addressed on those three different levels, has to be fully solved. And later on, we updated as well the documentation for this all those updates. So that's what we did for the specific issue for this release. So as for each release, we proceeded afterwards to updates that are mainly done for every time we have a release. So one of the first things that we usually do is the generation of the generic code for the code list. We use the Excel code list file and the XSL file. The generation of the XML samples for the request and the response, we use the XSLT file and the criterion Excel files. And those files are actually used as entry point for the validation. So the validation actually is threefold. First, we validate our XML sample against the XML schema of UBL, so to ensure that our XML structure is valid. And then we move to the validation of the code list, and then the validation of the XML sample, this time with specific rules that are written for the ESPD, so validation of attributes or mandatory elements or other requested business code for the ESPD. So for that, we use a schematron bat file, and then we generate a validator in a specific GitHub space. So the link is provided on the slide. And if we have validation error, then we have to correct those errors and proceed again through the whole process until the validation is successful. And once the validation is successful, we commit all the changes in all the spaces involved, because we have different spaces to do this validation step. And for this specific release, we had also XSLT files to update that was mainly related to attributes value, but mostly to validation errors. That were not really linked to the specific issue of the release. So for instance, the list version ID for the country was not correct. There were missing descriptive elements for the economic operator, like the role code, the identification, the name. In the response ID was missing. Also, the list version ID attribute was missing for the element confidentiality level code. So yes, that was just a validation issue. So we updated, we corrected those validation in the XSLT files, as to avoid them not to appear again in the following validation that we can have in the future, because the XSLT are the files that we use to generate the XML. So if we perform the update in the XML, when we are going to proceed to validation next time, we are going to have the same updates, because actually it's the XSLT writing the XML files. And for the documentation update, we update the index files in general, the home pages with the latest version, the month and the year, the release note, the README files, and general attributes, mainly the version of the release for a given release. So that's all for the version 3.0. If there are any questions or comments, so you can ask them or put your question in the chat.
Thank you very much, Pascaline. I'm checking quickly in the chat. I see there are no questions. I guess again, because we have gone through it during the whole year in our different meetings. Let me a moment. There is somebody, no, there is somebody just joining the event now. So they missed your part, but they will be there for the next one. Don't worry. There is a part version 4. So if that's all from you, Pascaline, or you have anything else to say for the last changes that we did in July?
Yes, I will just
Okay.
maybe move to the version 3.3.0. So I will give just a brief presentation, because we are going to have a live presentation. So the version 3.3.0 was released in July 2023. So as usual, the link for the release and the link to the online documentation are displayed. For this release, the main issue was related to the update of the list version ID attribute for code list. So this issue is actually very similar to the one that we did for the version 3.2.0 in the yes, for the version 3.2.0. So the same step is followed, and we had to update this attribute for all the ESPD artifacts at the code list level, the XML level, and the validation level. The percentage translation was another issue where we were misusing the UBL element for the translation. We were using a response quantity with an attribute unique code instead of using the element response numeric, which is recommended for percentage in UBL documentation. And we also had a general updates regarding data structure. And additionally to that, for each release, the same step, generating the code list, the XML samples, updating the XSLT, the schematron rules here, mostly related to the list version ID, and the online documentation as usual. So Interproc is implementing actually this version 3.3.0. And I will, without any further ado, I will give them the floor to present the ongoing work on this implementation.
Thank you very much, Pascaline, for the detailed description of what we have been doing. And thank you again to Andreea and her colleagues who are there somewhere. And they will start sharing the new screen and show us what they have been doing with the version 3. So I say Andreea, but I'm not sure if it will be you. So Pascaline can stop sharing. And then one of you will take the floor.
Well,
Andreea, I see you are there.
Everybody, yeah, we have organized, we have prepared a coordinated presentation and live demonstration of the platforms that we implemented to ESPD-EDM version 3.3, and we are happy to be invited here and to present what we have done. So I think Rune is going to start as the coordinator of Interproc project, and then we are going to go to the live demonstration. And at the end, we will also provide some comments regarding version 3.3 and then how we would like to see version 4. So thank you for this invitation here. And Rune, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andreea. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just going to give you, as Andreea already said, my name is Rune Kjolhaug. I work in the Norwegian Agency for public and financial management. So I'm a public sector, public procurement specialist. And for the last year or so, I've had the honor of being the figurehead of Interproc, as the head of the coordination group. For those that don't know Interproc, I'm just going to give you two small cents on what this is. We're a CEF-financed project. That consists of several partners, both from private sector, public sector, and also from academia. We've focused, what we're going to demo today is primarily ESPD, but Interproc as a project have looked at more than just ESPD. We go the whole kind of e-tendering pre-award phase. So we focused on adapting and implementing e-forms. Interproc is also one of the reasons why there's a lot of e-forms coming to the publication office from the Nordic countries, especially. That's been our part. We've also had German and Portuguese partners that have focused a lot on e-tendering interoperability in general, Beche and Vortal. And as was highlighted here, we've also implemented or created artifacts and implemented support for them in different systems of ESPD version 3, which then leads us to what we're going to demo today. So this illustration is just that we've had 4 different system vendors or systems that have implemented and been tested throughout the whole ESPD version 3 development. So we've done interoperability and conformance testing all over. So the table, as you see from the table below, we we support now version 3.3 in all the systems, both request and response versions. So the artifacts that we've used, part of the process here is to convert the specifications over to the format that are used in PEPAL. So all the artifacts that we have based this work on is now available through the PEPAL system in the pre-award community there. As I said, we've done this for all the versions of version or subversions of version 3, and we've tried to actively give feedback on our findings all the way throughout the project period. So with that, I'm going to stop giving general talk, and I'll let Nuno and Maria show this live.
Thank you very much, Rune.
Okay, thank you, Rune. So maybe I should take it from here. Let me just share my screen real quick. Can you see my screen?
Maria.
Yes.
Okay. So hello, I'm Maria Schiapera, and I'm working for UPRC, which is the University of Piraeus Research Center. And during the Interproc project, UPRC updated to the latest ESPD version 3.3, the Greek national ESPD service called Prometheus, owned by the General Secretariat of Information Systems and Digital Governance in the Greek Ministry of Digital Governance. So to demonstrate the ESPD services developed during the Interproc project, we chose to show you today a services procurement procedure. In this specific scenario, a Greek university requires software development services. And this procedure seeks to establish a contract for the development of additional services on top of the university's existing IT infrastructure. So the demo will begin with the creation of the ESPD request using the updated Greek ESPD national service, and then it will be followed by the creation of the ESPD response using the ESPD service offered by Vortal. So let's now start the creation of the ESPD request. The first thing I have to do here is to select the role. Since I'm creating the ESPD request, I will select to be a contracting authority. Next, normally I would create a new ESPD, but in this case, and in order to not waste any of your time and just watch me type things, I will reuse an existing ESPD request that contains all the necessary information for today's demo. So let me import this real quick. Next, on the procedure section here, a user can provide all the information that concern the procurement procedure and the contracting authority details. So you can see here information and forms about the identity of the procurer and the information about the procurement procedure. Again, for simplicity, we have already pre-filled all necessary data. Next, on the exclusion section, a user can select which exclusion ground criteria to include on their ESPD request. In this particular scenario, we chose to include all exclusion grounds criteria. Next, on the selection section here, a user can select which selection criteria to include on their ESPD request. For this specific scenario, we have selected to include some selection criteria related to services. And finally, on the last part here, I can export the ESPD request. And then I can also use the ITB validator to validate if the exported artifact is indeed a valid ESPD version 3.3 artifact. So let me do that. I will validate it for version 3.3. And you can see that the result here is a success. And the exported artifact is indeed validated successfully. And this concludes the ESPD request part. And now I can pass the floor to Nuno, who will show you the creation of the ESPD response. So Nuno, the floor is yours. Let me just stop sharing my screen. Okay. Nuno, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, before going directly into the platform, so supposedly the request that Maria just showed you should be attached to a tender that will be published, and me as an economic operator, which is interested in the procedure, will receive the tender, found the documents needed to fulfill, download it, and then I will come to the ESPD app to fill the ESPD response. So I'm acting as an economic operator, and usually what I will do is to import the ESPD that I found in the tender documentation and import it so that I can move on and fill it. So as you see, it is the tender that Maria just prepared with the information about the tender and the contracting authority. And then I will need to fill all the information regarding the economic operator, how I'm going to participate in it, if in case of a consortium, identify the members, the representatives of the company, and so the information that already exists in the previous ESPD versions. And then I would move on to the exclusion grounds. So, and as Maria showed, we selected all the exclusion grounds. So I need here to answer to all of them. And then I would move to the selection criterion, where, as you see, I have to fill only the ones that were selected by the contracting authority. So we have the ones defined. And in the end, I will be able to generate the XML. So like Maria, to simplify the process, I will not be showing you how to fill all the fields. I will just reuse one tender that I previously generated so that you can see how it is rendered in the platform. So I already prepared the response. And so what we are seeing now is that the information that was needed is already filled. So for all the fields, so we use the data that we prepared during the consortium integration test to make sure that everything was working. Okay, everything is filled, and so now in the end I will generate the XML. Okay, it's generated. Like Maria, I can show you that it is a valid ESPD response. So not this one, but the one that I just created. Validate it. And okay, I have a success. So the warning is the one that we already had in the request. And so now I will move to add this ESPD response to the documents of the tender and submit the tender, no, my offer, and submit it to the economic operator, to the contracting authority to participate in the tender. Okay, and in terms of the demo, this is what we had prepared. So show the request side and the response side, and complementing what was already being told by Bruna. So what we have identified that is still pending to implement. Apart from everything that we worked during this last year and a half, evolving the solution from version 3 to version 3.3, is that there are some critical things that are still not available, and we expect that with version 4, when we upgrade to version 4, we will have this and have a real stable and consistent solution to go to the market, and that will help contracting authorities and economic operators to increase the usage of ESPD. So the first topic is the one that we have been discussing all over this year of the UID logic, so that we already decided to move on with the XML path, and that will make it easier and secure to reuse responses between tenders, so that supply economic operators can reuse with more ease the information they already provided in previous ESPD responses. And the second topic is regarding the usage of lots with different requirements within the same criteria. So right now we can only support that you use different criteria in different lots, but you are not able to use different requirements inside the same criteria in distinct lots. And also in parallel, the other thing that was our expectation in the tender, that in the consortium, but we were not able to finish, is to have all the needed developments on eCertis side, mainly to be able to support multiple purely national exclusion grounds and some more online update of the criteria that are rendered in the application. And from my part, that's all.
Thank you, Nuno. Thank you also, Maria, Runen, Andreea. I don't know if you will, that's the whole presentation of Interproc. It's very, very useful for those that do not even know how to use the service, because we got last year many requests. There are economic operators that cannot use the service, and it's a pity because most countries have one. So maybe for next year we can organize a kind of seminar presenting people how to use them in different countries. And thank you also for implementing really the version 3 and giving us your whole feedback in the last months that has helped us also to move on with the next one. I see Andreea is also nicking with her head, and Marc, I don't know if you wanted to say something or
Yes,
if somebody wants.
I would
Yes,
like to say
okay.
something.
No, you are muted.
I just muted myself. I just realized. So it was very nice that you did the presentation, because it shows that the world of the ESPD is moving ahead, which is very important. And maybe you can confirm it. The service that you showed for Prometheus is actually available as open source. So if a member state would be interested in reusing ESPD version 3.3, they could just reuse the code that you provide. Is this the case?
Well, we are discussing that also with the ministry, and we are considering it. We are going, I think, to publish it as open source. So yeah, I mean, if some member states want to use it, they can contact us, and we will provide more details on that. Yeah,
that would be great. I could also contact Sakis for this directly. So, but yeah, it would be great if you could offer it, so that some member states, if they are interested in moving or upgrading their existing solution, that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And it was very nice to see, and maybe some of you didn't realize it, when Nuno showed the ESPD response, the service that he used was actually from ESPD-INT, which was a previous CEF call where Ward also participated. And it was also
we made the improvement of the version, and we kept the same look and feel for now. Probably we will change it now, but yes, it's right.
So, and coming back, Nuno, to I think you had one or two things that should be improved for eCertis. I can say that this is on our list, and by the end of next year, we will actually provide the possibility to have dedicated purely national exclusion grounds.
Good.
Thank you very much to everybody for all of the presentations and the active participation. Now I think it's time for all of us to just take a short break. It will be only 5 minutes shorter than foreseen. So we hope everybody had time to coffee, get some water to carry on presentation, and the floor will be back to Pascaline, who is going to show us first what we are planning for version 4. Of course, always following your proposals. So Pascaline, if you could please share your screen. Thank you very much. And there we go.
So welcome back. I will present now the version 4 that will be published first as a candidate release, and the final release is foreseen for next year. The link to the working branch is displayed. It's in the branch V400UUID of our ESPD GitHub space. The main issue of this release are the UUID replacement by XML path-like ID, also the management of lots for allowing different requirements for different lots, the purely national exclusion grounds management, evidence group misplacement, general updates in the data structure, and all the related release tasks for the generation of our files for our validation process, the code list, and the XML for the ESPD request and response, the various XSLTs update for the attributes value, the eventual validation errors, the schematron rules updates, and the online documentation. In this slide, I'm just providing an overview of the various main issues for the version 4. I will present them in detail in the following slides. So for the management of lots, in the as-is situation, exclusion grounds are common for all lots, and we can define different lots for different selection criteria, as you can see in the figure on the left. So afterwards, ESPD response is filled in for each lot for a given economic operator, so one answer per lot. The technical view in this design does not allow different requirements for lots, whereas the business view is requiring different requirements for lots. In this configuration, we declare lots at the beginning of each selection criteria. So we define all the lots to which that selection criteria apply to. And then it's the only spot where we define those lots. So the implication is that the set of requirements of the given criterion described below apply to all the lots defined. So we cannot distinguish subset of lots for different requirements. The solution that has been selected is to add an extra level for a requirement group, as you can see in this picture in the blue rectangle. So the line 15, we have a requirement group of cardinality multiple as to allow several instances of this requirement group, followed by the element requirement line 16, for describing a specific lot. So the cardinality here is also multiple as to allow a subset of lots. And it's below those elements that we have actually the specific requirement for the criteria. So we have the requirement subgroup and the related requirement from line 17 to line 19. So that way, when we have multiple occurrences, we can define different subset of lots and different value for the specific requirement for those different for those different set of lots. Also, that will be the solution that we selected for the management of lot in the version 4. Regarding the purely national exclusion ground. So this issue was raised in our GitHub space. It was related to differences between the mockup and our taxonomy files. So in the mockup, the user was able to answer to different purely national criteria. And for each of them, he was requested to provide an evidence. But when we look at the figure on the left, we can see that the question group to define the national criteria and the question group to provide evidence are separated question groups. So in this configuration, the user actually answers to all the national criteria, and then it's at the very end that he's asking for evidence. So there's no direct link between a specific national criteria and the evidence is provided by the user. So we corrected this request on the criterion file by moving the question group for evidences inside the question group for purely providing that is providing a question for national criteria, as you can see in the figure on the right. So now the question group is a subgroup inside the description of the national criteria. Beside this issue, we were also currently working on an issue related to evidence group misplacement. So here I merged the two issues because the solution is similar. So this issue was not specifically related to purely national exclusion ground, but to all the criteria in the ESPD, where actually the evidence group is always asked at the very end of all the questions regarding a given criterion. So there's no link to, regarding the data structure, to link the evidence actually to its related set of questions. So in this issue, we are just trying to find the right position of the evidence group for all the various criteria in the ESPD. Now I will present the well-known UUID issue, which has led to the XML path-like ID that is going to replace the UUID used so far. So a quick reminder, UUID is a universal unique identifier. It is made of 5 blocks separated with hyphen. It is machine oriented. And when there are online tools to generate UUID, and when they are generated, they are unique. The algorithm ensures the uniqueness of the UUID generated. In the ESPD, we are using 2 types of UUID, fixed UUID that are provided at each ESPD release for the element criterion, sub-criterion, legislation, group or subgroup for question or requirements. And we also have dynamic UUIDs that are generated at the creation of an ESPD request or an ESPD response for elements like question, requirement caption, and any occurrences that we can have for question or requirements. Initially, the problem statement was related to the fact that multiple occurrences of question needed to be instantiated for procurement procedure, and this was preventing the reusability at different level within the procedure, across lot or across different procurement procedure. The business requirement was to ensure mainly the connection between the ESPD request and the response. So for that, we should ensure reusability of criteria in both the request and the response, and facilitate the traceability and the once only principle. The solution that was selected was agreed by our OUC members. It's an XML path-like ID, and the goal is to reduce the randomness of the ESPD by no longer using dynamic UUIDs and actually defining fixed UUIDs for requirement and question. In the end, we are just going to generate fixed UUID for all the ESPD elements, and it's going to be an XML path pattern. So how this pattern looks like, so we can define the XML, we can divide the XML path pattern in 4 different parts. The first part in blue is describing the criterion element code and its prefix. The prefix is the tag for the criterion followed by its number, and also the type of the criterion, be it an exclusion ground or a selection criterion. So for example, for the element code crime.org, we have the prefix C1EG. The second part in green is an inner part for, that is an intermediate sequence of elements describing that are in between a root element and a target element. In the third part is the target element. A target element is the element you want to describe with a path. Most of the time it's a terminal element. A terminal element is an element that can hold values like question or a requirement, but it can also be a caption or a legislation. And the fourth part in orange, occurrences, is not always, doesn't always appear. So it's only when you have occurrences for terminal element that you will have this part. And this part is actually an iteration of the pattern R plus a number. So you can have 1, 2, 3 iteration of that pattern. I will explain how this is computed. So you have examples of XML path for request and also for a response. And another way to look at this pattern is like being a concatenation of 2 sequences. The first sequence from the root to the target element is describing actually the structural parts of the path. And the second sequence is the occurrence of the semantic contents. So the part orange with iteration of the pattern R. Moreover, for the response, you can have at the very end of the path a tag that is describing actually the type of the value. So RV for response value, RES for evidence supplied. So in this slide, I'm presenting all the short tag name that we defined for the various ESPD criterion element. For example, for the element criterion, we have the letter C as tag. For the element additional description line, we have the short tag ADL. So here we are taking the first letter of each word. For the element sub criterion, we have the short tag SBC. So here we inserted the letter B between the letter S and C because we were already using the SC tag for selection criteria. So the general rule is to use the first letter for each word. And anytime there is ambiguity or to ensure uniqueness of your tag, you can use any letters that appear in the word. And the goal should be to provide a tag that can remind easily the related criterion element. So in this slide, I will explain how our tag is computed and the related numbering. So the element in green right before each descriptive element cell are the various tags that we are creating with the numbering. So as you can see, you have C1, SBC1, QG1, and so on. So how these numbering for the tag are computed. Each time we create a new level, we start the numbering at 1. And it's only when we have the same element but different contents requested actually that we change the numbering. For instance, from line 14 to the line 17, we have a bunch of different questions. So we name them differently. They are at the same level, but they're asking different information. So they are named Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Same for the question group at line 18 and the question subgroup at line 24. So we have 2 question subgroups asking different set of questions. So they are different, but they are at the same level. So we have to identify them separately. So the first one is question subgroup 1, and the second one is question subgroup 2. So when we create a new level, we don't need to differentiate. So we always start at 1, but inside the same level, we might need to differentiate elements of the same type, but different contents related to it. Also, if we look now at the column W, which is the column where we have our XML path like ID. So we can see here for this criterion, which is the C1 exclusion ground framework, that we have XML path with only the structural part. So from the root to the target element, we don't have the occurrence description. This is because this is the request. So in the request, we don't have occurrences of question, and also this is an exclusion ground, and this exclusion ground doesn't have requirements, so we are not going to have occurrences for requirement either. So only the structural part here is illustrated. And this structural part is a concatenation of all the tags from the root to the target element that you have on the list. So the second element that I'm illustrating is the C25 selection criteria professional register. So this element do have a requirement and is actually implementing our proposal for the management of lots, as you can see in lines 11, 12, and 13. So here we have at line 11, the extra level for the requirement group that is of multiple cardinality. So this element is defining the subset of lots with the line 12 and 13. So we have the lot 0 and the lot 1. So if you look at the column W, for the XML path, you will see that you have the first sequence, the structural part, followed by the sequence related to the occurrence semantics. So for that sequence, we have 2 iterations of the pattern with the letter R. So the first iteration actually is related to the requirement group of multiple cardinality. And the second iteration is related to the element itself, the requirement for the lot. So we have R1 for the first lot and R2 for the second one. If we move a little below for the specific requirement of this criterion, so the line 14, it's defined inside the requirement subgroup. So the line 15 is describing the requirement occupation for these criterions. And if we look at the XML path like ID in the column W, so we can see that the occurrence part has 3 iterations of the pattern with the R's. So why is that? If we look at the path from the root to the target element, the first R refers to the requirement group with multiple cardinality. The second R refers to the requirement group line 14 that is also of multiple cardinality. And the last iteration is the element itself, the requirement. So the number of times you are going to repeat that pattern R is related to the number of elements of multiple cardinality that you have in your path from the root to the target element. Now I will present the ongoing implementation in the version 4 or what we have done so far. And the main part that we targeted first is to fill in automatically the XML path ID in the ESPD request and also in the ESPD response. Well, I only highlighted example for the request. I didn't show any for the response, but the principle is the same. The first approach that we decided when implementing the VBA script was to fill in the tag and the path column by column. This design raised an indentation issue related to the fact that if we slide element unconsciously from the left or from the right, the numbering is going to be incorrect. So we refactor or redesign, review our approach, and we decided to fill the tag now line by line. So by filling the tag line by line, instead of basing ourselves to the position of the element in the criterion Excel file, we are actually basing ourselves on opening and closing of element, which is more important for an XML files. The structure is defined by the tag open and when it's closed. So the only your file needs to be structurally correct for our VBA script to produce the correct numbering for the tag. So this approach is more generic and corresponds more to the construction of the tree structure and XML document. So we only look at opening and closing element, and we proceed to a sequential navigation of the structure. And for that, what we do actually is like we mimic the function of a stack that is called last in, first out. So the element that you remove is always the last element you put in your stack. So how does this work for our criterion file? So each time we open an element, so you read your files, and from the root you have opening elements. So each time you have an opening element, you insert it in your stack, and it's only when you are going to encounter the closing element. So that closing element, according to the tree structure navigation, is always going to be the element at the top of your stack. So you remove that element and you continue your navigation either by inserting new element or removing existing element in your stack. And the path to the target element is always what you have stored in your stack from the root to the target element. Your path is always stored in your stack. So that's how we proceeded for our VBA script. And for the request, we create a template to describe the new request with the XML path like ID, because we have now two separate files, one for the request and another one for the response. So the first step, we write the tags with the right number, so the green element at the left that you saw. And after that, we write the structural part of the path, and then we complement, if needed, this structural part with the occurrence semantic for requirements in the request. And in the response, we have the same step, the same steps, and we just complement the structural path of the answer to question. If there is occurrences for question with the occurrence semantic for the question, and eventually we add the tag for the type of question, if it's a response value or an evidence. So this task is already done, so the resulting files are available in the folder criterion of our working branch V4 UUID. So you can check the criterion files and our XML path ID generated. What's remaining is to generate the XML for the request and the response. And for that, we need to review and update all our X-related XSLT files so that it generates the new constraint that we have in this proposal. So the implications of the solution of the XML path like ID is that we are going to replace the UUID. So we are going to use a structure-based approach now, and for that we create new tag elements for all elements in the ESPD. This solution also implies to have a new algorithm to compute the path. So this algorithm is mainly has three main functions. The first one, you compute the tag with its number. The second function, you compute the structural part of the path, and then this last part is adding the occurrence semantics. For this, we have to update obviously the criterion file, Excel, the XSLT, and from the XSLT you generate the XML. And as usual, all the updates will be available in the online documentation. The benefits of the solution goal is to allow the consistent link between the ESPD request and the ESPD responses. For the same structure, we use the same pattern, and there should be no ambiguity when addressing a structure. The ESPD responses can be easily mapped with the request, so we no longer have the dynamic identification. And also the content of the ESPD can be easily reused, except when we have requirements that are not compatible for the same structural element. Maybe we define a constraint that are making those requirements not referring to the same semantic information. So therefore, we cannot reuse the content because we are looking for different, semantics here. So that's all for the version, summary of the version 4. So if you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat.
Thank you very much, Pascaline. I will be checking just a minute the chat to see if we are getting any questions, actually things that we have been discussing all of this year and actually since 2 years to arrive to an agreement. Well, I see there is nothing for the moment in the chat, and then the only thing I would to clarify is that, as Pascaline mentioned at the beginning, this will be only a candidate release foreseen for April next year. After we have published that candidate release, we will freeze it, of course, and we will need to know from you how long do you need to analyze it so that we can update changes for the release that we plan for the end of the year. Already 2 of you contacted me in our comment box, and actually they are asking for at least 6 months freeze time. Yeah, so we will discuss this during the meeting in January, and those that really want to contact us already in the OPSPD email box, so you can send me a mail already or put something in the GitHub. So as I see there are no questions, there is a question. I see now there is a question. Just a moment. Nuno, will we have a pilot implementation for B4? Meaning if we will show. Nuno, please, can you?
Sorry, what I mean by this, so it was one of our main issues during version 3, and the reason why we had to make so many versions is because we had a template standard, but we didn't have a reference. So when I say a pilot, is a reference implementation like we had in version 1, where we can really see how it is supposed to work and to confirm that the standard really works. So if it is planned that you do a pilot, or if it will be like in version 3, that we have to implement from scratch and then improving with the implementation.
Okay, Nuno, you are not the first person that comes with this question. Actually, for the moment, we have no way to implement ourselves any version. There is no service that we could use, as the service from the commission was shut down a few years ago. And there are, Marc knows a bit more about this than me, because he's more involved in all of these meetings. But actually there is a rumor or kind of pilot project to start something, and I do not see it will happen for the version 4. Marc, maybe you can follow it up.
I think what we have to see, and I understand you, Nuno, that you say this. We have to see if we can find a possibility on this. I will check internally what we can do. I would certainly not to start any kind of development from scratch, but to see, for example, when we look at the code, that we might be able to reuse the code from the Interproc project. To use this for version 4. So it's something that we have to see how to deal with this. But as Paloma said, the reason why we will not have different versions like we had for version 3, but we name it release candidate to check that what we are doing is correct. We have seen in the beginning that some might move towards version 4. So we have to work together to see how we are going to validate that what we have figured out in the technical specification actually works.
Thank you, Marc. So Nuno, I hope probably it's not the answer you were expecting, but it's what we can say now for the moment.
Perfect.
Yeah.
At least we know it's a concern also on your side. So, and we know it's not something that can be done from one day to the other, but it's just a concern that it was an issue during our experience with version 3. That's why we are raising it again. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see there are no more questions for the time being. We will come back to the questions and answers part at the end, and then maybe we can give the floor to our colleague Andreea, who is going to show us the part of the eAccess and what we are doing now in our meetings that you can visit always Tuesdays, and concerning the ESPD request and the model. Pascaline will carry on sharing, and Andreea, you can take the floor, please.
Hi, thank you, Paloma, and thank you, Pascaline. First, I just want to start with a bit of a context, but also thanking the Interproc team. That presentation was something that I was craving for because I'm new to this and I don't really grasp everything at the moment. And now let's start this part about the eProcurement ontology. For everyone that doesn't know exactly, the main goal of eProcurement ontology, EPO, is to provide a common understanding of the procurement domain between all the stakeholders. This way we will enable the correct input of data in systems and solutions. We will ensure that the data that is exchanged is understood. We will ensure data quality, viability, and we will allow data to be combined and further analyzed. We recently published our 4.0.0 release version, which will be presented in more details at our quarterly meeting. It will happen next Tuesday on the 5th of December. After doing significant advances in the post-award phase, implementing the contract, the catalog, the ordering, the fulfillment modules, it is time for us to go a bit back in time in the pre-award phase. And this is how we started with the development of eAccess, which is in fact the ESPD request part. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, great, thanks. My slides are mainly with diagrams that we've been working on in the past couple of months. I will try to explain step by step what we have here. 1 second for me to make it. Okay, good. So first of all, we tried to see how the ESPD request concept is related to whatever we have already in the ontology, based on some resources that we gathered with the ESPD team, requirements, user stories, use cases, competency questions that we have that we needed answered for, and we came up with this implementation. We have the ESPD request concept here in the left part of the diagram. We can see that it can refer to a notice where we have all the information related to that specific notice. And it also concerns a procedure. From the procedure, we can go to the buyer, which is an important role in the ESPD request, and also the procurement service provider, which provides the platform that can be used by the buyer and also the economic operator. But the economic operator, it will be integrated in the response part. We don't care about it at the moment in the request. Also, as a requirement from the ESPD, we needed to provide the address and the contact point of a specific role buyer, for example. And this is how we can get that already from our core module, for the EPO core module. We can see that a buyer is a type of an acquiring party, which is an agent in role. It is played by an agent. That agent is an organization, and there we can have the address. This is also, the address is from the core vocabularies. We are aligned with them in all parts that relates to location, also the channel, contact points, all that stuff. Again, for the contact point, we can see it there. An agent has a contact point in role. We also provide the other way around when we need the contact point of the organization. So the organization has a primary contact point. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and now we can see that the ESPD request that concerns a specific procedure, it specifies a procurement criterion. And in our procurement ontology, the procurement criterion, I don't know, we have multiple types, one of them being the qualification criterion. And here is what we are interested for the ESPD request, meaning the exclusion grounds and the selection criteria. Again, we can see that the procurement criterion class is a subclass of the CCCV criterion. And this is with the alignment of the CCCV. It's, I have a slide with this also, is our alignment related to the core criterion and core evidence vocabulary. This is what CCCV means. We can also see that based on EPO, a lot specifies the procurement criterion, and also the lot group specifies the procurement criterion. This is related to something that Pascaline mentioned that you will have in 400 as well. We can go to the next slide now, please. Okay, and here is the legislation part. So in the ESPD model, we have the legislation that was linked to a criterion, and we said that we're gonna align to CCCV. They have the reference framework. It's a concept that they have there, but then we sort of switched to the ELI implementation, which is more suitable for us since we had multiple attributes on the legislation concept in the ESPD-EDM project. For this part, I'm gonna need to explain a bit this diagram. First of all, we can see here that an ESPD request that specifies a procurement criterion, which is a type of criterion, and the type of requirement, it is derived from a legal resource. This legal resource, it is realized by the legal expression. These are all classes that are reused from the ELI ontology, European Legal Identifier ontology. Now I'm gonna provide some definitions here because also for me it was a bit different to understand what is going on there. So for example, the legal resource that we can see in the middle of the diagram, yes. Their definition is that a legal resource is a work in a legislative corpus. This applies to acts that have been legally enacted, whether or not they are still in force. For example, the abstract concept of a legal resource can represent a legal act or any component of a legal act. And the legal expression that realizes this legal resource is the intellectual realization of a legal resource in the form of a sequence of signs, typically alphanumeric characters in a legal context. So it's basically what's written on paper about that legal resource. For example, any version of the legal resource whose content is specified and different from others for any other reasons, language, versions, and so on. Okay, here we can see that for a legal resource, we can specify the jurisdiction and the resource type. And also we have the subdivision of the legal resource subdivision level there. And these are useful because we needed these attributes for the ESPD request. The subdivision is the type of a document subdivision, if it's article, a paragraph, a section, and so on. We are using this authority table subdivision. For the resource type, it's the type of the legal resource, if it's a directive, if it's a law, draft proposition, parliamentary act, and so on. For this one, we are using the resource type authority table. And for the jurisdiction, this is the jurisdiction from which the legal resource originates. And for this one, we are using the ATU authority table from the EU Publications Office. Okay, and now we can go to the next slide, please. Good, and this is what I was mentioning earlier. This is our alignment to core criteria and core evidence vocabulary. We already had this implemented in EPO in the core module, and we just need to attach the concepts that we have in ESPD request to these classes, just to make sure that everything is aligned. We can see that from CCCEV, there is the CCCEV requirement. It has 3 subclasses: the criterion, the information requirement, and the constraint. I added here some definitions that are taken from the CCCEV directly, because we came to an obstacle while modeling the ESPD request, where in ESPD there are some requirements, and here in CCCEV we have the requirement class, which is a parent there, and we also have the information requirement class, but they have different meaning than the requirements that we have in ESPD. In ESPD, from what I've understand after long discussions with Paloma and Pascaline, the requirement is it is a requirement, but with a constraint linked together. And here we can see that we have it differently. An information requirement has a constraint. So they are split somehow. And we also have the information concept, which is the piece of information that the evidence provides or the requirement needs. This is the link with the response after investigating their the CCCV explanatory example that they provide. Okay, good. Now we can go to the next slide, I think. Yeah. Great. And this is what we actually finalized this Tuesday. Yes, because this is Thursday. Yeah. So we finalized this Tuesday, this last part after long discussions that we had. And this seems like a good draft that it can probably be published soon. We have the ESPD request that specifies a procurement criterion, which is a type of criterion from the CCCV. And we can see that from the procurement criterion, we can specify the requirement group or the question group. Within the requirement group, we can contain requirements, but also requirement subgroups, which are a subclass of the requirement group. And the requirements, of course, we can see that they have a constraint that's specific to the requirement. And then we have the question part, which are the, let's say, some data requirements that you need an answer for. So we have the question groups that can be contained within the procurement criterion. The question group can contain questions, but also can contain question subgroups, which are a type of question group as well. And one more important thing, the requirement group also contains question subgroups. Okay. Good. In order to have this solution, we did some instantiations of this, and we had different models. This seems like a good one. The only part that personally I have some struggle with is that it adds a level of complexity at the instance level, but now it depends how is the actual technical implementation of this, because this is what I don't really know and I haven't interacted with the technical implementation. So it will be good for me, because that's why I came to this presentation, just to advertise our project and to ask favors from you. If someone that is on the technical side of the implementation of this, if we can have like some, I don't know, brainstorming, or if I can understand exactly what happens at the technical implementation side. And I think this is it, no? This was the last slide. So thank you all. And if you have any questions, or if you have the answers to my questions, that would be better.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much. It's true that we're having intensive work. I see also Natalie is there. I don't know if she wants to intervene right now. I will check.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay. My video doesn't seem to be working. I've changed the computer, so never mind. What I would like to say is, as Andrea said, we do have some questions, whether it is really necessary, for example, to have these groups, because maybe it can be reduced to just being questions and requirements, and a question on its that questions a question, and a requirement that is on another requirement. Now, to do this, as she said, we need help from people that have technically implemented that. So I do ask anyone that would agree to to do a bit of brainstorming to us to let Paloma or the ESPD project know, or contact directly the Ontology project, and we will get in contact with you to see when we could actually have this brainstorming. That's my input. I had nothing further to say. Paloma, if you want to continue.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm sorry, I just was muted. I thought you were hearing me. That's also very important what Natalie is saying, that we should all try to collaborate together. I can forward to you all the members of the ESPD Open User Community the invitation also for the quarterly, but it could be, if it would be possible, that we open our GitHub issues, for example, you answer there and that you participate in our weekly meetings. Just contact Natalie or me, myself. And I see there are no questions or answers, which is more important for us right now from your side. So, and as we are a bit late with the presentation, I would give the floor to Marc Christopher, because he's going to explain us now what's up with the eCertis. So Pascaline can stop sharing the screen. Normally Marc should be sharing, but he will not. So in this case, it will be me, it seems, Marc, right?
Many thanks, many thanks.
Okay, I try.
So
I
so the
share
title,
just
What's
a
Up
second.
eCertis, is actually, I hope it's
Can
a
you
nice
please
title.
confirm it? You can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. I can
Perfect,
see it.
thank you.
So what I will do is to save a little bit of time, because I don't want to be between us and your lunch break. So I will try to speed up a little bit the presentation. If you can go directly to the first slide. The first slide is about the release planning in the next year. And what you can see here is we will have a release in roughly February next year, where we are using more UIDs in eCertis. We will have some enhancement for the usage. So, for example, in the search, it's very difficult for you to imagine now, but when you search for something, currently when you type in something in the text field, you don't see, is this an evidence, an issuer, or criteria. In the future, it will be shown what type it is. So that will help you. Something that will make our life much easier, and yours also, is you will be able with this release to mark specific information as inactive. So that if something does not exist in your country anymore, you don't have to approach us to say, we don't use this anymore, but you can do it actually yourself to mark specific elements as inactive. And because of that, we will also add for the eCertis editors a filter that you can see what information has been actually marked as inactive. And you have always the possibility to make it active again if there was an error. And then during the summer and during mainly the whole time next year, we will start to make some major upgrades to eCertis from a technical side. But also from the functionality point of view, we plan to provide you the possibility to, for example, have generic evidence. We see that ISO certificates 9000 is used. Some member states provide this, and we will make it easier to provide this in the future. We have received also the input that we should make link specific evidence only to a specific type, because sometimes some evidence you can only use in the area of works. That is something that we will also do. And to come back to what Nuno said, we will actually provide with the release end of next year the possibility that you are able to provide purely national exclusion grounds individually on eCertis. Something that we want to do also to protect more privacy is to use hash values for personal data. And we are still thinking about if we should provide a kind of a super admin for each member state, so that you can have several teams in your country to work on specific parts of eCertis. But that is something that we still not certain if we should really implement it or if this is really needed. And then we have a final release, a maintenance release, end of next year. What is important here is that during the summertime and during the beginning of the next year, we will get in touch with the eCertis community to see how shall we actually implement some of the features, and how can we make, how can we link the data from eCertis better to the ESPD, but also to eForms. And with this, you can already go to the next slide, which is about, yeah, and Manuela said it already in the beginning, is to see how can we actually connect eCertis to the other tools or services that are provided from the Commission, but also on your site. Currently, the ESPD lives completely on its own, like eCertis or like eForms or like the national databases. We have to do everything to actually connect those elements so that when we have an eCertis, that you are better able to connect this to ESPD, that that you can connect it to better to eForms and also to national systems. And the element that is very important for this is actually already available. It's available on eVocabulary, and it's used partially already in the current forms, eForms. It's the code list on criterion, where we have just a plain list of all the criterion that actually exist in the ESPD and eCertis. And through this vocabulary, we will be able to connect all the different elements, and the different tools that you see here, eCertis, ESPD, eForms, and the national systems, have a different purpose. So there is actually no overlap between the different tools, but actually they can or they will fit very nicely together. eCertis has the information about what criteria are actually used in a member state for the different directives. It has information about criterion issuer and evidence types. The ESPD is actually currently it has also all aspects that we needed for the in eCertis, but only for the Directive 24 in ESPD itself. So in the future, the ESPD will be used purely as a way of means to exchange information between the buyer and the economic operators. The ESPD already provides now the possibility to link this information to the national systems. eForms, especially with the version that will be adopted still this year, will be better linkable to eCertis and the ESPD because they will use, we will use there also the complete criterion code list that you see above. And it will be there to inform about how exclusion and selection criteria are applied. And then we have the actual national systems, which have the knowledge about the economic operators, and they can already help to fill in the ESPD automatically. And we've seen already in the year 2017, I saw that in some countries that was actually used. A nice example you have in France, but also in Estonia, where the information can be pre-filled from national databases. So this code list is very important to tie all the different elements together. And then we can already go to the last slide. I only have 3 slides, which shows a little bit, but it's a very high level view. It is not the complete picture, but it's just to give you a flavor on how the different elements can work together. Is we have on the left-hand side, the planning, the competition, and the result phase, and the buyer selects the procedure. So they select, for example, the utilities directive. They get the information from eCertis, what kind of criteria, exclusion, selection criteria can be used. That is used for the ESPD service on the buyer side. They have the possibility then to fill the criteria, especially for the selection criteria. then they can publish this criteria in eForms. To be very clear, when we say eForms, when I say eForms 2023, it doesn't mean that you can provide the structured information as structured information, but what it provides is that you have, let's say, how we do it is the first step is to say, this is the criteria, for example, criminal convictions and or turnover, and then you have a text field where the information that you have in structured format in the ESPD will be just provided as plain text. Then when the buyer economic operator participates, they actually import the ESPD request. They retrieve the, then the national ESPD service can be connected to the data, to the national systems to fill in this information. They have to provide the rest of the information, and then they submit the ESPD response as part of their bid, as Nuno presented earlier. And because the ESPD provides the possibility to link to the actual evidence, which is somewhere in this service, the buyer can then later also query this, check the response. And when we say publish information on the economic operator in eForms, it's not about how they fulfill the exclusion and selection criteria, but it's merely about information about the economic operator, because what we see very often when information about companies is provided, it's not complete, it's wrongly filled. And the ESPD response should be used to provide the data, the correct data directly in eForms. So that's it from my side. Is there any question from your side?
I will stop sharing, Marc.
Yes, that's fine.
It's okay for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. I see there is so far no question. It seems that the presentation was
good and Okay, thank you for the presentation also, Marc. I hope next year we will work a little more closely together and we will achieve all of the targets that we have. And I see also no questions actually for none of them. We should move now to general questions and answers, but as I have seen that there is nothing from your side after each presentation, only the couple of questions we got from Nuno and the intervention of Natalie and the questions from Andrea, but I see no answers either. I think we can then move, unless I don't see anybody raising the hand. No, we can move to the last part of this meeting, which is actually a survey about the meeting itself, concerning the event. If you would please take part on it, and Panos will share his screen with the Slidos, actually, so that you can connect. Not sure if Panos can hear me. I think so.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you can.
Problem connecting my content for some reason.
Okay.
Just give me.
I can pass you the ball here. Do you want to change the presenter? Yes. Let's see if like this it's working now, because I stopped already sharing.
Okay, yes, that's great. Okay.
Okay. Please remember the next questions that we're going to put concern rather the event itself, more than the ESPD. It's important for our colleagues from events as well to see, for example, if we can organize more meetings live, face-to-face, as we were doing in the past. But the questions will come soon so that you can see them on your screens and log in. I think it's exactly the same code as we were using before, just the second part. I cannot hear either see Panos, so maybe he's having troubles as we had already this
I'm
morning.
here. Can you hear me?
You are there. Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm
You're
just
connected
browsing all
twice
the
because I
questions.
see you are muted.
Okay, I'm just browsing all the questions that
Perfect.
participants can check, and you're very welcome to join via the QR code and come back to the survey at your own convenience at some point.
Okay, we are not seeing your screen.
You're not seeing my screen?
No.
No?
No, you are not sharing.
Okay, well, that's odd. Okay, well, probably we're encountering some issues. In any case, we'll try to communicate this to you via email.
Okay, then we'll do it like this. Yeah, mainly is the questions actually concerning this, what you think about the event, what could we change in the future organizing these events, and if you are ready to participate in this. So as soon as we publish and we send you a new email, you will get the QR code to scan and the link as well. And if you could please answer them just for us to organize the next big event next year that we are thinking to organize it together, actually, as we did in the past, with everything, eSenders, Ontology, ESPD, eCertis, all together in a couple of days. It will simplify our lives. So if anybody has any question, or Natalie wants to say something else about the meetings for the Ontology.
No, just that we have the quarterly meeting on Tuesday. On next Tuesday, on Thursday, we will have an e-ordering meeting, and the following Tuesday we will be discussing again the ESPD request. Okay, so any of your people, technical implementers of this, would be more than welcome to this meeting on Tuesday, Tuesday the 12th of December, okay? But I will ask Paloma to send you all the connection details for the quarterly meeting, the e-ordering meeting, and the next meeting that we will discuss the ESPD request, where we would appreciate any technical implementers attending. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And thank you to those that will participate, because it's really important for us. And from our side, Manuela wanted to say you goodbye, but apparently she had an emergency, so she had to leave. In this case, it will be me closing just the event. Thank you all, for being here. Thank you, and especially all of the speakers that have been given us an idea of what we are doing. And also Marc for the future, Natalie for also the future, and Andreea, what's going on the ESPD, Pascaline for the presentation of what we have done. And the warmest thanks to Interproc, really showing us really things can be working version 3. So Marc, anything to say before we close?
No, I was very happy to see the ESPD service, and I think we should do more of those in the future. So if any one of you has an upgraded or updated ESPD service, please approach Paloma so that we can include this in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then enjoy your lunch break, everybody, and see you then next year, actually, for the ESPD.
Happy Christmas. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.